Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, guys. Before we get into the topic, first let us introduce ourselves. We are from Group 8, and my name is Pramesti Ayu Wandhira as a moderator.
My name is Diva Rahmadian.
My name is Tarishah Sha'vana.
My name is Rifki Kurniawan.
My name is Jovanno Yulion.
And today we are going to talk about language and society.
Alright, first, what is sociolinguistics? Sociolinguistics is the study of the sociological aspect of language. This discipline is related to the role of language in maintaining social roles in a community. Influences on sound choice, grammatical elements, and vocabulary items can include factors such as age, gender, education, occupation, race, and peer group identification, among others. In sociolinguistics, several studies will be discussed in the next slide. Variety of language, accent, and dialect, and also Pidgin and Creole. First, variety of language. There are a handful of ways of linguistics categorize varieties of language. Some definitions refer to word usage and rule, or merely to vocabulary, while others refer to the way language adapt culturally. In broader strokes, all of these terms, however, can cover variation in grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. Below, we'll look at the following variety of terms. Variety of language. First is formal. We use the terms standard, polite, and formal to refer to language that sticks to the rule and is essentially presented as the proper form of English. In practice, this is not necessarily practical English, but rather the sort of English we expect to see in formal writing or polite situations. Standard English is what is generally taught where possible, but alternative forms may be taught in communities with developed variation.
Variety of language. Informal or colloquial. Colloquial language is effectively anything that is not formal, often described as spoken language. It is informal as the aim is to communicate rather than stick to rules. So it is where we see contractions and idiomatic language being used. There are countless varieties of this, and it is a blanket term that covers all of the other terms below. Variety of language, lingua franca. A lingua franca is a common language used between people who speak different language, as the full purpose is bridging communication gaps. This can be very adaptable and therefore will not necessarily stick to traditional language rules. English is used as a lingua franca all over the world, more commonly in fact than it used by native speakers, and in some cases may even be taught in a specific form to fit these needs, rather than a standard English. Variety of language, slang. Similar to jargon, slang is the language that emerges within a subgroup to describe new ideas or to assign new words to existing ideas to develop a sense of identity. As with jargon, this can be dictionary. So, while jargon typically refers to specialism, slang is more typically associated with social group. For example, the language of a younger generation. Extreme form of slang may be used specifically to discuss conversation, such as rhyming slang.
Action and dialect. An action is simply how one pronounces the word, a style of pronunciation. A dialect includes not just pronunciation, but also one's general vocabulary and grammar. Within any given language, both dialect and action will vary, both largely a product of geography or regionality. The difference between action and dialect is an action refers to how people pronounce words, whereas a dialect is all-encompassing. A dialect includes the pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary that people use within a group. Example of dialect: a Northern American might say hello, a Southern American might say howdy. Action and dialect. Region dialect. Regional dialects are varieties of language that emerge based on regionally specific use. There are many examples within the UK alone, from the broad difference between the English spoken in the north and south to the more specific, localized dialects, such as those spoken in certain cities, some of which have their own names, which goes from Liverpool, Judy in Newcastle, and Brummy in Birmingham, to name just a few. Action and dialect. Social dialect. Social dialects emerge like dialects, but within a specific class or culture instead of a region, though they can be further developed to fit certain regions. This may also be referred to as a minority dialect, highlighting the variation is not the predominant use. A major example of this is African American Vernacular English.
Accent and dialects, vernacular and patois. Vernacular is the term used to describe language as it is used naturally by a specific people. What it describes can therefore vary depending on what we wish to specify. We could speak about the vernacular of a country or a smaller community within a city, or of a certain times and place. For example, we have a modern vernacular which would include vocabulary that would not be part of the vernacular of, for example, 50 years ago. Patois is a term used to refer to minority, non-standard use of a language, so this could cover all dialects, creoles, and pidgins. But this carries somewhat negative connotation as it implies an inferiority. Patois tends to be used pejoratively. It is regarded as something less than a dialect because of its lack of an associated literature. Even a language like Breton, a Celtic language still spoken in parts of Brittany, is called a patois because of its lack of strong literary tradition and the fact that it is not some country's language. What is Pidgins and Creole? Pidgins is language with no native speaker. It is not first language, but it's a connect language. Creole is a normal language in just about every sense. Creole has native speaker. Its Pidgins and Creole are well organized of linguistic system. The sound of Pidgins or Creoles are likely to be a fewer and less complicated than those of related language. What is the difference between Pidgin and Creole? Pidgins are non-native lingua francas, while Creole save native speakers. The difference between these two languages is in the function of structure and expression of behavior. Creole is a pidgin whose vocabulary is expanded to express a number of meanings and meanings.
Example of pigeons. An English-speaking colonial power has a sugar plantation, and they bring over laborers from various different countries to that sugar plantation, and those people speak different languages. But in order to work together, they need to have a common language. So they try to adopt English. But since they do this quickly and they just adopt the basics, the resulting language is a very simplified language, just using a basic vocabulary of English and a very non-English grammar. That is pidgin language. Examples of Creoles. Tok-Pisin language is a language that is taught to children as their mother tongue. The Tok-Pisin language is spoken in Papua New Guinea. This language was formed due to the influence of elements of English and Papuan languages, as well as several other Austronesian languages. In the city center, children from mixed families learn Tok-Pisin as their first language. Therefore, the Pidgin language changed to Creole. Examples of vocabulary from Tok-Pisin Creole are as follows: no good in English, no good. Bahasa Indonesia artinya bye-bye. In English, bye and bye. In Indonesia artinya segera. Sekan. In English, shake hands, yang artinya membuat kedamaian. Kill him. In English, kill him, yang artinya bunuh dia. Pisin. In English, pigeon, yang artinya burung. Grass. In English, grass, dalam bahasa Indonesia artinya rumput.
Alright guys, that's all for our presentation. Hope you can learn from our presentation. Thank you for watching. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.